So today I'm presenting my MSc work that I finished in September, and so first of all I think today lots of people have really interesting field sites, and Northern Ireland is also an interesting field site, and so mine is just north of Belfast, just south of Larne, and you're probably all aware that there's a lot of Paleogene extrusives across the area, and so quite often for Palynology everything's been cooked and there's nothing left. But luckily there's a really convenient local fault that protects the Triassic-Jurassic section, so actually the things I got out of it were beautiful. So for my MSc, my aims were to provide the biostratigraphic framework for this borehole in Northern Ireland to track the environmental change over the borehole, and I wanted to see if the assemblages I assigned were, well, whether they were rubbish or not. So the biostrat, I won't bore you with loads of different names, but as you can see they're all wonderfully preserved, and we had a mix of pollen, spores, wood, acritarchs, dinoflagellates, and the most important taxa were the dinoflagellates on the left-hand side, an acritarch right down in the middle, number 5, and my favourite one, which is 15 and 16 in different orientations, and it's my favourite because in the orientation in 16 it looks a bit like a hearing aid, so I had a little giggle to myself after 10 or so hours each day on the microscope. And the most important taxa for defining the base of the Jurassic with Palynology was Tiagati, which is the one in the middle that looks a bit like a brain, and that is genuinely the best specimen I had of it, so it was really important but pretty much not present in my samples. So I wanted to know where's the boundary, and it took a lot of work to work it out, but basically I set the boundary using the key marker taxa rather than any kind of general change in assemblage, because quite a lot of the taxa ranged the whole way through the section. So paleoenvironments, I ran with this model from Abink, but where you separate the spores and pollen into the different niches that they lived in, so upland, lowland, river, pioneer, coastal, and then I added in shallow marine and open marine so that I could try and put all of my different species into just one model. So for the Retian assemblage, as you can see, there's quite a big marine influence, and then the boundary assemblage, you're seeing a relative sea level fall, and you've still got that marine influence, but it's a lot less than previously. And then again, when you move up into the Hatangian, you're seeing a lot more marine influence, and I was even getting forams, as you can see, this one, which are really pretty when they come up. But the problem with this model is that it only really looks at whether it's relative sea level change, and actually in the boundary assemblage where I'm seeing potential sea level fall, you're also getting lots and lots of trilete spores, so that could just be indicative of loads of extra surface runoff because it's really wet. And the most important part of the talk was I really wanted to test whether it was a real boundary or not. So I went with analysis of similarity amongst some other things. We're really interested in R, so you're looking at how similar samples in an assemblage are in comparison to the rest of your samples. So if you get R equals 1, it means that all of the samples in that assemblage are more similar to each other than they are to the rest of the samples. If R equals 0, then all of the samples in your assemblage are just as similar to all of the samples outside of the assemblage. And if R equals -1, something's gone really wrong, because it means that all of the samples in your assemblages are actually more similar to samples outside of your assemblages. So basically you've pulled assemblages from nowhere. So luckily for me, I got 0.36, which was a positive value, which means that the samples in each assemblage were more similar to each other than those outside the assemblage. But as you can see, 0.36 isn't that big a value, so actually all of the samples are quite similar, which is what I had what I'd guessed anyway, because lots of the taxa range through the whole section, and I was really reliant on those key taxa to know where the boundary was, and quite often they weren't there anyway. And the last bit is, I know there's a couple of palynologists in here. If you have any clue as to what this is, none of us can work out, so help.